We're back here on the Wall Street Shuffle. Dan Cofall, Danny Stewart. 877-326-3255 is our number, and the website is thewallstreetshuffle.com. A little housekeeping. The Wednesday night event is all full. We are very sorry about that, but we'd love to have you register for our next event, so you can go on the website and do that and sign up for our newsletter, Peak Lifestyle. You can do that, too. We're going to try something a little different today, and we're going to just fill up this board with callers, and meaning with guests. We've got two guests on with us right now. We've got Dr. Walter Block, and Walter is a professor of economics at Loyola University and a senior fellow with the Ludwig von Mises Institute. And we have Four Arrows, who is a university professor, writer, and American Indian activist whose work has focused on indigenous worldviews, wellness, and counter-hegemonic education. Lots of big words. At the end of the day, folks, we're talking about differing worldviews on higher education. They have a new book out the two of them have a new book out called Differing Worldviews in Higher Education. Two scholars argue cooperatively about justice education. Now, first of all, gentlemen, we can't have a sense of cooperation here. We must have unbridled conflict. It just isn't fun otherwise.
Well, 4 Hours is a rotten kid. How's that?
All right, let's talk about, first of all, I'm afraid to ask, but what is justice education?
Well, allow me to take a shot at it, and I'm sure that my comrade will disagree. We started this book because I had been asked by the publisher to write a book on social and ecological justice in higher education. I wanted to do something different than just do a textbook. And I remember reading a number of articles that Walter had written, and also recalled that I had disagreed vehemently with all of them. And in a time where so much division is existing between so-called left and right wing and liberals and conservatives, etc., I thought, instead of just taking our stands against one another, wouldn't it be great if I could take this sort of arch-rival academic thinker and try to understand his position and he mine? So I invited him to engage in this topic because I knew that he had a strong differing opinion about social justice in higher education, and so that's how this began.
Let me throw in a quick comment here. So, social justice and justice education. Did we get those mixed up a minute ago? Because the idea of social justice concerns me a bit. Because social justice, I don't think I know how to define social justice. Could one of you two define social justice for me, and then go define justice education?
Well, let me take a hack since it's my turn. 4 hours went last, and we usually alternate. To me, you can define social justice in two ways. One, the way it's usually defined by most people, I would say it's a synonym for socialist justice because it's based on egalitarianism. For example, my school, Loyola University New Orleans, advertises itself as Social Justice University, and by what they mean is pretty much egalitarianism and socialism and anti-free enterprise. However, you could conceivably define social justice as an interest in issues of social justice, or an interest in issues of egalitarianism or of markets or things like that.
Well, don't lose us too much in the deep dive on this, because I think the real issue is the issue of social justice. So I understand social justice, and I understand social justice is very much a term of a socialist oriented scholar. And correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, if that's not the case. I don't understand social justice at all. I've never understood that. How do I get to social justice? What's a social injustice?
Well, most people, I think, if they see it, they know it. The concerns about, for example, if slavery would be considered to be socially just, would you argue that? Would you say that you believe that slavery is a socially just institution?
Well, I would just say it's a plain old unjust institution. I don't see why you need the word social. Slavery is unjust because it's the seizure of people, innocent people, against their will. On the other hand, take something like, I don't know, a sweatshop or price gouging or something like that. Now, the social justice types would say, well, those two are socially unjust. And I would say, well, as long as it's a capitalist act between consenting adults, it's just. And I don't see that adding the word social to the mix clarifies anything.
Yeah, I do have. Let me try a question for both you guys also. How in any way does the discussion of justice education or social justice make us more competitive in the world? We're 17th to 21st, depending upon how we look at it, in our education standards ranked in all the countries in the world. And in my humble opinion, which is probably going to tick off both you guys, it's because we have silly arguments about social justice and justice education that our kids are not learning arithmetic, are not learning how to read, are not learning how to write, and we've got them so confused in things that don't mean a damn to them making a nickel or becoming a better member of the society. I'm sorry, I don't understand why we're arguing this when we can't even get a huge proportion of our kids don't graduate from high school, and those that do, I wouldn't hire to wash my car. They're so stupid.
Well, I would suggest a counter argument to that, Kenny, is this: that competition is not the greatest problem facing our world today. We could take and look at ecological devastation of our oceans. And without even tying that to economic issues relative to fisheries, profit, etc., if we continue to destroy the oceans, we're going to be in a world of hurt. To what degree are justice issues? Walter and I actually agreed that adding the word social in our book was really unnecessary, that if we're talking about issues within society, that's sort of an automatic. And we just referred and agreed to refer to the concept of justice. But if we don't look at issues that connect justice to the kinds of problems that are facing all of us, and we only think about the competitive profit, then I would suggest that we're not going to get out of the maelstrom that we're currently in with virtually every life system that we have in disrepair: fresh groundwater, oceans, air quality, etc.
Let me get my mic. There we go. Hold on just one second. Do I have my mic back? Okay. My question then becomes, hang on, I lost my train of thought on the mic. Go ahead, guys.
Well, I would say, to just get a little bit off the topic, and then I'll get right back to it, the title of our book is Differing Worldviews in Higher Education. Two scholars argue cooperatively about social justice education. I would say perhaps the most important word of that title, the key difference between our book and many other books that are debate format, is the word cooperatively. When 4 Hours approached me with this, I thought, some sort of nut, and, I had to Google him, and then I saw he really wasn't a nut, or if he was a nut, he was a nut with a long track record and a long paper trail, and I grew very impressed with him, and that's why I agreed to do this. I think the difference between our book and many others is that cooperatively, and I'm sure 4 Hours would agree with me on this, if not much else, where we each tried very determinedly to look carefully at the other guy's view and not score cheap points or anything like that. With regard to your question about why Johnny can't read, I teach introductory economics, and we do elasticity, which means you have a fraction like, say, 3/4 over 2/3. And these are college kids, and they can't solve that, and I have to sort of teach them that, and they should have learned that, I don't know, in high school or in grade 8 or something, and maybe the problem is that we have too much education, thanks to a socialist government, which is pushing education for everybody. In years gone by, when I was a kid,
did you just say too much education?
Went to school, and people got jobs and got training in becoming a carpenter or a plumber or something like that. So maybe we're educating too many people. It's, I guess, a taboo subject, but that would seem to be one possible explanation of what you're talking about. And with regard to what 4 Hours was saying about the oceans and the air pollution and stuff like that, I think that is a very crucially important thing, and I would favor upholding private property rights, which I think that the pollution and the spoilization of the ocean are a result of lack of private property rights.
Would both of you gentlemen agree that our biggest priority is to get our kids to learn how to communicate, to write, to read, to understand mathematics, to understand science, to be interested in something that makes them a living in the worldwide community, since we are a completely globally diversified economy? I don't think I'm old-fashioned at all, but I must admit I love the academic discussion, but it's irrelevant. I don't know when you're going to introduce the concept of social justice or a justice education into the system, whether it's in middle school, high school, or college. But it seems to me that that's a discussion to be held once you get out of college, and that once you have a career path and once you have demonstrated some use to society. This doesn't seem to generate. And by the way, I'm a member of the von Mises Institute. It seems odd that we're not going back to our basics. And I would think you guys would be screaming for core education and ignoring these fringe issues. It would seem to me.
Well, Kenny, I actually think all three of us are in agreement about the lack that exists in current education. I would toss in addition to the so-called basics, mathematics, science, that things are changing so rapidly. It's the ability and the motivation to learn that is missing in our education system. Critical thinking is absent largely all the way through our educational system. And, you can learn a basics 1 year, and the next year it's changing. So we need people that know how to research, how to think. So I think we're all in agreement on that.
Critical thinking is absolutely the thing that is missing in school. I'm running a little short on time. I want to try to get one more topic at least in here, and this is, what do you all think about the unions in the public sector unions in Wisconsin? What do you think about the teachers being unwilling to participate in pay cuts up there? Have they delivered the goods? Are they worth the money?
Well, I would say we should have private education. We shouldn't have any public education. When you have Catholic schools, and I'm very much in favor of Catholic or any of the other private schools, they educate kids at a fraction of the cost, and they do a much better job than the public schools. And the reason for that is that the private schools are part of the free enterprise system. When they don't do too well, they can lose money and they can go broke, and competition, I think, is very important here. On the other hand, in public education, if a public educator does a bad job or a public school does a bad job, they just give them more money, more taxes, and I think that's getting out of hand.
4 Arrows, do you agree on that?
Well, I agree only partially. Going back to what he said about our cooperative argumentation, it was very interesting to find that as we did argue, we found a lot of common ground. We found common ground between libertarianism and my indigenous worldview, for example. And in that common ground, I think, is a partial answer to what your question is. The issue of labor unions we've covered in almost an entire chapter, and surrounding many disagreements is the critical thinking that relates to such things as income and wealth distribution, child labor issues, and how they do affect the progress of our country and the competitiveness of our country. And without the kinds of arguments that bring in that equation that can refer to justice, that can refer to issues of greed. Certainly, we are aware in what's happened with the Wall Street situation in our world and globalization, that greed versus the illusion of a free enterprise is something worth talking about. And if we simply stick to the so-called basics of mathematics and science and are not able to look at the nuances of and argue respectfully about these nuances, then we're not really going to understand what is happening in Wisconsin and what the competitive and economic issues really are.
And here's where I think the common ground is, gentlemen. I am way late on this issue, so we're gonna have to call that a day. I think the common ground is if the students have learned how to write, if they have learned how to read, if they've learned how to do mathematics, if they've learned science, then we can go on to even more entertaining social issues and discussions like this. But until the social issues should not be the primary issues facing our students today, it should be the functional issues to make sure they can compete in the world economy. We've had Dr. Walter Block on with us and Four Arrows. They are the co-authors of Differing Worldviews in Higher Education. Two scholars argue cooperatively about justice education. We appreciate both you gentlemen being on board. Love to have you back when we can spend more time on this.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kenny.
All right, gentlemen, take care. We'll be right back. Danny and me, 877-326-3255. We'll be right back.